Here is a brief introduction to Dreamweaver. So when you install Dreamweaver, it's going to ask you to do a couple of things. One is that it's going to ask you whether you want the developer mode or the standard mode. I highly recommend the standard mode. It's also going to ask you, I'm going to go to my settings so I can show you. It's also going to ask you about interface. I recommend the dark interface. I think it works better. And it's not that it works better. I think it just looks better. I think it's all a dark background and white type, and for some reason I find that easier to read. What else? That's most of what I remember from the setup. Okay, once you get into Dreamweaver, the first thing we're going to want to do is set up a site. We go to the window at the menu at the top, and we go to Site, New Site, and we can name this site. I'd probably call it Tech 272 Spring 2024. And then it asks us where this site is. So this site name only names the site within Dreamweaver, so you can tell if you have a list of several sites you're working on. It helps you distinguish between them, but it doesn't affect anything else. Then it asks for the local site folder, and I'm going to click Browse, and I'm going to go again to my desktop, and I'll go to Nettles Spring, or no, not that one. Sorry, Web Class Spring 2024, and I'm going to choose that. And I'm just going to click Save. And in this case, I'm going to cancel because I've actually already got that site loaded. So I'm going to cancel, but you would want to click Save. So I'm going to cancel. And then if we go to Site, Manage Sites, but you would click Save on yours and you'll have your site, and you want to click on it and click Done. And when you do that, you'll have a list of tabs in the upper right. Let me double check on Reset Standard to make sure it's correct. Yes. You want to click on this Files tab. You'll see your site folder. You can click down the down arrow. You'll see your project 1 folder, your project 2 folder, and your images folder, because I've taken this already a little bit farther. So you can see your images, and to open a file, you double click on the file and it will open up. Their default method of looking at this is a split screen. You can click on Live or on Code, and it will just show you the code. Split will split your screen and show you a preview of your page and the code. And then Live, we have a choice on the right for Live. This shows you the site, how it ought to look on a web browser. It's not actually on a web browser, but it will show you what it should look like on a web browser. There is also a version called Design, which looks pretty similar. You can actually edit here. Um, what I'd suggest is leaving it on live, even though you can't generally. I think you can edit more than you used to be able to, but generally you can't do a lot of editing on the live version. The thing is, the design version is a legacy preview, and pretty quickly it will do a really lousy job of showing you what a site looks like. So I tend to not use that. There have been times when you'll get weird errors, things that are obviously not right in live view. And what I'll find is that if I go from live view to design view and then back to live view, it will those errors will correct. Um, and sometimes when we're working with tables, which we haven't talked about yet, um, the design view works better for working with tables, but generally live view is the view that you want to work with in InDesign. Okay, and if you've got a small laptop, then split view might not be very usable. Um, it might be impossible to use really, in which case, I would switch between code view and live view. On mine, I've got a big enough screen that I can do a split. The other thing is that there is a preference. So right now this is split horizontally. If I go to view and I go to split, I can tell it to split vertically, which I find is generally a better choice. And you can change the size of your screen, and you can make the split bigger on one side or the other. And if for some reason you want to print one of these, then you need to click on this side and tell it to print, or click on this side and tell it to print, and otherwise it will print whatever it thinks is selected. What else do I want to say about this? Okay. So one nice thing about Dreamweaver, well, there's lots of nice things about it. Amongst others, if I want to insert an image in my text, say I wanted to insert an image here, I can go to insert. I can insert hyperlinks. I can insert images. If I click on insert images, it asks me if I want to insert it before that place, after that place, or I want to nest it. And then I can go to my images folder, open, and you can see it just places it there. Something we haven't talked about, but we will talk about, is that it automatically gives the width and the height of the image it's in pixels, but it's just as quote mark and then the number of pixels in a closed quote. There is also something it automatically adds. So we might want to actually delete those and then change the image size using CSS. So we could do that. There's also something called an alt tag, which I neglected to add previously when I was showing you how to add images. So we talked a bit earlier about adding things for people who have difficulty seeing, like an ARIA label and so on. If I go down here, okay. This alt tag is also for people with low visibility, poor vision. And so image of as a, um, let's pretend it says 1919. Actually, I don't have a, yeah, I do have a date, 1883, in his 40s. Okay, okay. So I'm actually being a little excessive here. But what you want to do is you want to give people information about any images that you've provided. And generally, if there's text in the image, then you want to type that out also, since um, if people can't see, then that any type that would be in the image would also not be visible. Okay, what else did I want to say? Um, then we're going to be talking about CSS, and there's something called CSS Designer. I don't know why that doesn't seem to be working. There we go. Which will could allow us to then style things using CSS. If I go back to the files, I can actually change the name of a file here. And then any links that are connected to that are going to get updated automatically when I click that button. Date. And you'll see that I get an asterisk at the end of the name, and that says that this isn't saved. File, save all, and it'll save that. The one thing that I find the most useful, particularly when I'm reviewing your files, is to go, let's see, Window, Code Inspector. That's not what I'm looking for. Great. Hang on a second. Okay. What I was looking for is this little exclamation mark down here. If I click on the exclamation mark, you'll see that I get a list of errors. Line 24, line 85, line 100, and line 114. If I double click on those, it'll actually take you to that line. And an alt attribute must be present on image elements. So as I said, when you add an image here, in Dreamweaver. You also get Alt equals quote, and again, image of Walter Gropius. Line 85. Alt equals image of Alt. Go to line 100. Alt equals in 1938. On 14. Alt equals in 2003. Okay. We're missing a quote mark. Now have an extra quote mark. Notice how when you get it right, all the type then goes back to being the proper color. Now, that's a pretty good evaluation of errors, but actually, if you want a much stronger evaluation of errors, you can go to Window and you can go to Properties. No, I'm sorry, I go to Code Inspector. No, I don't go to Code Inspector. Window, Properties. Not what I'm looking for. Again, instead we go to File, Validate, Current Document, W3C. W3C are the people who make or are responsible for HTML and CSS, and they have a validator on their website. We can also use the validator here. And if I go OK, there is a validation window that shows up. And you'll see that there's a bunch of other things that their validator picked up that Dreamweaver did not. And again, if I click on this line, it'll take us to that line. It's saying that we do not want these closing slashes on the meta tags. So they were wanted earlier in the universe, but apparently they don't want them now. So I'm going to delete those meta tag closing slashes. I'm going to save this file, and I'm going to go to this little arrow to the left on the validation. Click OK. So it removed some of those. I'm going to go to line 50. And there is a backslash there. What? Let me see if that's correct. That would be new. Hmm. Rookie. All right. I'm not going to argue with it. Line 16. So apparently since the role, we moved that role from the UL, and now that it's with the nav actually serves as the role. So I can delete that. Um, it doesn't like the extra space in the telephone number, but I don't really know what to do about that. It could be that the phone number is just out and out wrong. And then line 36, we're actually missing https://en. And then down here, there, save the document, go to validation, and I've only got this, which I don't understand. I'm sorry I lost that quirky doc type. I'm not going to change that. Okay. And then I'm going to just huh. Well, I don't really know what's wrong with that phone number, so I'm not going to. Oh, right. That was where it would have been asking for that. Yeah, it's still not happy, so I would want to double check that phone number. That's not something I have a control over. Oh, maybe. Yeah, that did it. Okay, so when we have a phone number here in the href, then we need to have dashes for our between our numbers. We don't want to have any blank spaces. And that one would probably be more like that. Okay. All right. Anyway, so this validation from the W3C is a more complete validation than Dreamweaver gives us, but Dreamweaver gives us a fairly decent validation with this built-in mark right there. And that will make it easier to just go through and find errors in, say, incomplete tags at the end and so on. And then we save this file. And just because we're using Dreamweaver doesn't mean you can't open these files back up using the previous program that we're using, or almost any other program, pretty much any other program that you use for editing HTML. The nice thing about HTML is that it's it doesn't rely on a specific program. It's just simple code. And so Dreamweaver can work on it. The previous program that we're using can work on it. You can even work in TextEdit if you set up TextEdit properly. Um, it's all that's the nice thing is it's all pretty basic. And okay. Also, it will usually give you, if I have an error, say like that, and save. You see an error there. And what it does is it'll actually give you the line number will actually come up as a red error. And so then I'd go back to scroll over it, line 29. And as soon as I correct the error, it goes away. Okay, so that's a general look around Dreamweaver. And then what we will have is later to file view. Later, we'll have a way that we can upload these images using the files over here to a website somewhere. So I recommend downloading Dreamweaver and starting to use that, if only because it makes it a little bit easier to track your errors just by clicking on, seeing the little exclamation mark and clicking on it. It gives you a list of errors, and then you can go back through and fix them. It'll also be a little easier if you have a screen big enough that you can see the preview, because we can make changes here and see the changes here in real time. Say, for instance, I get rid of this. The outline that I created the end of last file, I just deleted the asterisk, and so that no longer applies. And so they went away. I put them back, put it back, and then it's back. So we can very quickly take a look at what's going on. There's also a button in the bottom right called Preview, and I can open this up in, say, Safari and take a look at what it looks like in Safari. And I'm going to go back and remove that Walter Gropius photo right here. So I find it interesting. Okay. All right. So that's a quick look around Dreamweaver.